I didn't mean to hurt him.
I just want to tell y'all, I'll be home soon, or I'll be Keon. I love my family.
Imagine waking up one day, full of dreams and ambitions, only to find yourself facing the rest of your life behind bars. It's a chilling thought, right? But for some teenagers, this horrifying reality comes crashing down in the blink of an eye.
Assault with intent to commit charge occurs with a potential life imprisonment.
What happens to them when they hear they're going to jail forever? How do they deal with life behind bars? Join us on this mind-blowing journey to explore some of the most disturbing reactions of teenagers getting life sentences. Philip Chisum. Philip Chisum was just 14 years old, but he committed terrible crimes that led to a life sentence in prison. He attacked and killed his maths teacher, Carline, who taught at Danvers High School. This shocking crime was carried out by her student. In Salem's Superior Court, Judge David Lowy called Chisum's actions brutal and senseless when he handed down the sentence. The judge also praised Carline, saying she lived a life of quiet heroism, and noted that the pain from this tragedy would never fade away. Chisum's lawyer argued that he was mentally ill, but the jury didn't agree. Chisum was sentenced to life in prison with the chance of parole after 25 years. He also received a 40-year concurrent sentence for additional charges of abuse and robbery. Chisum's mother, Diane, cried softly during the sentencing and apologized to the Ritzer family for her son's actions. Meanwhile, Chisum stood before the judge without any visible emotion, showing no remorse for what he had done. Shawnell Jackson. Nathan Potter, a 21-year-old film student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, had a promising future ahead. At just 19, he was already pursuing his passion and likely making plans with his family and friends for life after graduation. But everything changed on one fateful day. That day, 19-year-old Jackson Shawnell and his accomplice, 20-year-old Derek Thomas, spotted Nathan walking to his apartment. They decided he would be a good target for a robbery. Thomas stood watch while Jackson approached Nathan to rob him. When Nathan didn't have any money, the robbery turned tragic. In a panic, Jackson shot Nathan in the chest, killing him instantly, and fled the scene. The police caught up with Jackson quickly, thanks to a tip from his uncle. Jackson was arrested and charged with Nathan's murder. Throughout the trial, Jackson showed no remorse. He was seen smiling arrogantly and mouthing curses at Nathan's family as he was led out of the courtroom, treating the whole process like a game. Jackson's mother spoke in court, insisting her son wasn't a monster, despite the evidence against him. The judge, Rebecca Dalley, delivered a stern sentence: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for felony murder. Jackson reacted violently to the sentence, cursing the judge and struggling with court officers until he was pepper-sprayed and restrained. Amid the chaos, a member of Jackson's family told Nathan's family she hated them, while another said, "God is the judge." These outbursts led some to believe that Jackson's violent tendencies might be a family trait. Derek Thomas, who had played a smaller role in the crime as the lookout, was also charged with felony murder. He pleaded guilty and received a 12-year prison sentence. Nathan Potter's bright future was cruelly cut short, and Jackson Shawnell's unrepentant behavior in court only deepened the tragedy for Nathan's grieving family. Roxana Sikorski. Roxana was a teenager from Plymouth Township who, back at 2014, admitted to planning to kill her family. At 15 years old, she teamed up with her older boyfriend to try and murder her adoptive parents and younger brother. Prosecutors decided to charge Roxana as an adult for this attempted crime. However, her parents stood by her, explaining that she had mental health issues and was heavily influenced by her 23-year-old boyfriend, Michael Rivera. Roxana had started as a model child, but began to change as she hit her teenage years. She was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder and was put on medication. Her behavior worsened after meeting Rivera on Facebook. She started sneaking around with him and even ran away to stay at his house for a few days. Roxana wanted to harm her family because they had reported Rivera for statutory assault. On October 17, 2014, Rivera positioned himself outside Roxana's family home and sent her text messages with instructions. Roxana attacked her 12-year-old brother, Lucas, and then tried to do the same to her sister. After fleeing the house, she was arrested at Rivera's home. She told the police they were planning to get married. During her sentencing, Roxana was tearful and apologized to her family for her actions.
I would like to apologize to my family.
She was visibly trembling and weeping, showing her deep remorse. Despite her apologies, the judge sentenced her to up to 20 years in prison for her crime. Jennifer Mee. Jennifer Mee, born on July 28, 1991, became famous on the internet for an unusual reason. She had a case of uncontrollable hiccups, which led to her being nicknamed the Hiccup Girl. Jennifer's hiccups were so frequent, she reported hiccuping about 50 times a minute. Her struggle to find a cure captured public attention, leading her to appear on various television shows, including NBC's Today Show multiple times. Jennifer's quest for a hiccup cure made her a national sensation. Although it might have seemed amusing at first, her condition quickly became a serious matter for her. Despite trying numerous remedies, nothing worked until Dr. Bob Lind finally found a treatment that cured her hiccups. With her hiccups gone, her celebrity status faded. After her hiccups were cured, Jennifer's life took a dramatic turn. She reportedly ran away from home and began dating a man named Lamont Newton. Together with Newton, she devised a plan to rob people by luring them online. Jennifer enlisted the help of another accomplice, Laren Rayford, to execute their scheme. At 2010, their plan led to a tragic incident. Jennifer, then 19 years old, lured a man named Shannon Griffin to a house where she, Newton, and Rayford were waiting. They robbed and shot Griffin 4 times, resulting in his death. Although it was unclear who fired the fatal shots, all 3 were arrested and charged with murder. The police reported that Jennifer and her accomplices admitted to the crime. During her trial, a recorded phone call between Jennifer and her mother was played, in which Jennifer said, "I didn't do anything. I was just there at the wrong time, at the wrong place." Despite her claims, Jennifer was convicted of first-degree murder in 2013 and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Newton and Rayford received the same sentences. Upon hearing her sentence, in reaction, Jennifer broke down in tears. The Beverly Brothers. Back in 2015, a shocking tragedy occurred in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. 5 members of the Bever family were found dead in their home. Miraculously, 2 family members survived, a 2-year-old baby girl and a 13-year-old girl. The older girl, who survived the attack, identified her 2 elder brothers, Robert, who was 18 years old, and Michael, 16 years old, as the attackers. The brothers were soon arrested and charged with the brutal crime. In his chilling testimony, Robert revealed his twisted desire to become a famous serial killer. He pleaded guilty at 2017 and was sentenced to life in prison without any chance of parole. Michael also gave a disturbing testimony. The jury found him guilty, and he received 5 consecutive life sentences. When the sentence was announced, Michael initially smiled, then wiped his eyes. But for the most part, he and his brothers showed no emotion throughout the proceedings. This horrific event left the community in shock and forever changed the lives of the surviving family members. Dylan Shoemaker. Babies are often called little monsters because their constant crying can be very irritating. For 16-year-old Shoemaker, life seemed too short to handle such annoying cries. He had the job of babysitting Austin, the nearly 2-year-old son of his teenage girlfriend. Despite living with his girlfriend and her parents, Shoemaker found it hard to keep calm when the baby wouldn't stop crying. His girlfriend worked night shifts, leaving him responsible for Austin and his 3-month-old brother. The endless crying drove Shoemaker to frustration. He testified that in his anger, he started spanking, slapping, and even throwing Austin onto the floor. He also admitted to punching the baby multiple times in the head through a pillow. These violent actions caused severe head injuries to Austin, resulting in brain bleeding and ultimately, his death. Shoemaker faced charges of second-degree murder and child abuse. Before sentencing, Supreme Court Justice M. William Buller recalled a phone call Shoemaker made to his mother from the holding center. In the call, Shoemaker admitted he thought his youth and appearance might earn him sympathy from the jury, saying, "I am a 16-year-old blonde. Probably all I have to do is cry in front of the jury, and they're going to feel sorry for me." The judge condemned this manipulative attitude and sentenced Shoemaker to the maximum punishment of 25 years to life in prison, showing no sympathy for his tears.
I can't take back what was done. I wish I could.
Shoemaker reacted to the judgment, crying uncontrollably, saying, "I'll give my life for Austin, I loved him a lot." Martis Fuller. In May 2019, a teenager named Martis Fuller, now 18, shot and killed his ex-girlfriend, Kaylee Juga, and tried to kill her mother, Stephanie Juga, in their Kenosha home. "You are a very dangerous and damaged human being," Judge Wagner declared sternly. Fuller was found guilty by a jury in March of murdering 15-year-old Kaylee and injuring her mother. For Kaylee's murder, he received a life sentence without parole, and the sentences for attempted murder and burglary will be served at the same time, but after the life term. Prosecutors explained that Fuller blamed Kaylee and her mother for his expulsion from school and removal from the football team. At 15, Fuller planned to get a gun and ammunition from a friend and had a relative dispose of the weapon, which was later identified as the murder weapon. On May 9, 2019, the mother and daughter were upstairs preparing for a camping trip when Fuller sneaked in through the open garage. He knew the house and Kaylee's schedule well, having observed the home before the attack. Kaylee was shot 5 times and died instantly. Stephanie Juga encountered Fuller on the 2nd floor, was shot while trying to hide, and later found her daughter unresponsive on her bedroom floor. "She was always by my side, my biggest cheerleader, and now I'm lost without her," Stephanie tearfully said in court. She described how Fuller ruined her life and mourned all the milestones her daughter would never achieve, like graduating high school, going to college, or starting a family. Prosecutors sought the maximum penalty, highlighting Fuller's lack of accountability and the domestic violence roots of the case. Witnesses depicted Fuller as obsessed with Kaylee, hurting her at school and harassing her at work and home, leading up to the shooting. Kenosha County District Attorney Michael Gravely called the Juga home a tomb, filled with memories, and described Fuller as someone willing to kill for control. "There is no remorse in this case," Gravely said. After the shooting, Fuller fled to a relative's house in Racine, where he was arrested the next day. A cousin admitted in court to helping Fuller and disposing of the gun, despite initially lying to police. The trial, initially set for February 2020, was delayed because Fuller was accused of jury tampering. Prosecutors said he tried to contact jurors from jail, leading to additional charges in April. Fuller pleaded guilty to 1 count of communicating with jurors and was sentenced on May 19, 2021. In his reaction, he showed emotion for the first time during the 6-day trial when the verdict was announced, crying and resting his head on the table. During the sentencing hearing, Fuller's defense attorney, Carl Johnson, asked for a chance of release in 25 to 30 years. Fuller did not speak directly but had a letter read by his co-counsel, Jillian Scheidegger, where he blamed the media and maintained his innocence. "So I am sorry. Despite the hatred that is against me, I still am sorry. But I have to continue to stand innocent because I am," Scheidegger read on Fuller's behalf. Judge Wagner criticized Fuller for the calculated nature of his crimes, his lack of remorse, and other offenses committed while in custody. "You seem to have no ethos, no regret, no sorrow, no empathy," she said. "I don't have any ability to trust that you will never commit these acts again." Jessica Carline. 17-year-old Jessica caused a tragic accident when she crashed her car into the Wyoming Medical Center, leading to the deaths of 2 people. On September 2024, she admitted to being guilty of 2 counts of vehicular homicide. Jessica was driving east on 2nd Street, heading towards the hospital, when her car veered off the road, hitting a sign and then crashing into the hospital building. The crash resulted in the deaths of 27-year-olds Brandon Avery and Amanda Strickland, who both suffered fatal injuries. Jessica was also injured, but survived. During the investigation, police found a can of air duster in Jessica's car. She confessed to using it to get high. It was also discovered that the car was speeding at 76 miles per hour at the time of the crash, and nobody in the car was wearing a seatbelt. In court, the judge sentenced Jessica to serve between 12 and 16 years in prison. She was overwhelmed with emotion during the trial, crying and showing deep remorse for her actions. Nicholas Lindsay. Nicholas Lindsay, who was just 16 years old when he murdered St. Petersburg police officer David Crawford in 2011, has been given a life sentence for the third time by Pinellas Pasco Circuit Judge Thane Covert. In a detailed 26-page ruling delivered during a hearing attended by numerous police officers and Crawford's loved ones, Judge Covert explained why he believes Lindsay, now 21, should spend his life behind bars. Despite Lindsay's youth at the time of the crime, his lawyers argued that a recent change in the law should reduce his sentence to 40 years. This change followed a U.S. Supreme Court decision that found mandatory life sentences for juveniles to be unconstitutional. However, Judge Covert disagreed with this argument, citing current law which requires judges to consider various factors before sentencing a juvenile to life imprisonment for murder, including the defendant's age, potential for rehabilitation, and impact on the victim's family. Lindsay's defense team pointed out his efforts toward rehabilitation, such as obtaining his GED and participating in programs while in jail. However, prosecutors presented evidence of his continued violent behavior behind bars, including fights, assaulting another inmate, and possessing contraband. Judge Covert remarked that Lindsay's actions do not demonstrate a strong potential for rehabilitation. Officer Crawford was fatally shot by Lindsay while responding to a report of a possible car break-in. Lindsay, armed with a rifle he bought for $140, fired 5 shots at Crawford, who was carrying only a notebook at the time. Crawford died a month later, adding to the tragedy of 2 other officers slain in the line of duty. Lindsay was first convicted of first-degree murder in 2012 and initially sentenced to life without parole, which was the only option at the time. However, after the Supreme Court ruled mandatory life sentences for young offenders unconstitutional, Lindsay had a hearing in 2013 where Judge Covert once again sentenced him to life in prison. In his reaction, he said, "Itself, that's what it is what it is." Lionel Tate. Lionel Tate holds the troubling distinction of being the youngest American to receive a life sentence for his actions. In 2001, when he was just 14, he was convicted for the tragic death of 6-year-old Tiffany Unick, an incident that occurred in 1998 in Broward County, Florida. The events unfolded while Tate's mother, Carline, was babysitting both children. She decided to take a short nap upstairs, leaving Lionel and Tiffany alone. Tate, who was a hefty 165 pounds at 12 years old, claimed he was simply playing with Tiffany and demonstrating wrestling moves he had seen on TV. Unfortunately, this play turned deadly. Tiffany suffered severe injuries, including a lacerated liver, a fractured skull, broken ribs, and brain swelling. The prosecution highlighted the severity by stating that her injuries were comparable to those sustained from falling from a 3-story building. During the trial, Tate's lawyer argued that his client had no intention of harming Tiffany and that the injuries were an accident. However, the judge, Joel T. Lazarus, was not convinced. He described Tate's behavior as cold, callous, and cruel, rather than that of a playful child. As a result, Lionel Tate was sentenced to life in prison. Reacting to the judgment, Tate remained mostly silent and expressionless during his sentencing. However, in 2004, his conviction was overturned by a state appeals court. The court found that his mental competency had not been properly evaluated during the trial. Consequently, Tate was released, serving 1 year under house arrest and 10 years of probation. T.J. Lane. T.J. Lane was just 17 years old, a teenager who had once attended Chardon High School. On February 27, 2012, he did something terrible. He took the lives of 3 students and injured 3 others. According to witnesses, Lane had issues with one of his victims. He used to ride the same school bus as his victims, and on that fateful day, he used a .22 caliber handgun to carry out the attack. The injured students were rushed to the hospital. Tragically, one of them was left permanently paralyzed. Lane was charged with 6 counts, but because he was a minor at the time, authorities had to decide whether to try him as an adult or a juvenile. The lives lost were those of Danny Parmertor, Russell King Jr., and Demetrius Hewlin. Shockingly, Lane showed no remorse for his actions. When he appeared in court, he initially wore a blue button-down shirt, but as he sat down, he unbuttoned it to reveal a white t-shirt with the word "Killer" scrawled across it. Given the chance to speak in court, Lane made things even worse by hurling hateful comments at the victims' families. He even laughed while one grieving mother gave her statement. Ultimately, Lane pled guilty to all charges and received 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Upon hearing the pronouncement, he laughed in response. Danta Wright. Jordan Clee, a beloved high school football star from Ann Arbor, Michigan, had a promising future ahead of him until his life was tragically cut short in October 2016. His community was devastated by his untimely death, which marked the first homicide of the year. Jordan, who should have been in class at Pioneer High School that day, was instead found shot dead. The perpetrator, a teenager named Danta Wright, along with 2 accomplices, attempted to rob Jordan at gunpoint, leading to his tragic demise. The community was left reeling, seeking answers to why such a senseless act was committed against an innocent young man. Eventually, Danta confessed to the crime, shedding light on the events that unfolded that fateful day. Jordan's mother, Karen Clee, sat in court, grappling with her grief as she learned the truth about her son's death. Despite Danta's lack of remorse, Karen bravely delivered a heartfelt victim impact statement, expressing the profound loss she felt. In a touching moment, Karen's words echoed the deep bond she shared with her son, contrasting sharply with Danta's indifference. As the sentencing proceeded, Danta's disrespectful behavior further worsened the gravity of his actions. The judge, annoyed by Danta's behavior, considered rejecting the plea agreement and going for a trial, potentially resulting in a lifetime behind bars for Danta. Despite the pain and anger, Jordan's family ultimately chose to pursue closure, rather than prolong the ordeal with a trial. Karen's closing words conveyed not only her grief, but also her desire for Danta to reflect on his actions and find deliverance. Ultimately, amidst the pain and sorrow, Jordan's family extended forgiveness to Danta, hoping he would use his time in prison for self-reflection and transformation. But Danta, reacting to the judgment, smiled and nodded like nothing was happening. Antonio Barau. When Antonio was just 14, a court sentenced him to 36 years in prison. He was found guilty of killing his 70-year-old great-grandmother in a sudden and violent attack. Antonio and his friend Nathan had gone to visit Barbara Olson with a plan to steal money from her house. They attacked her with a hatchet and a hammer. The whole community was horrified by the cruelty of the attack, especially because it was committed by her great-grandson. During his sentencing, Antonio was given a chance to speak, but he became too emotional to finish. While reacting to the sentencing, he started crying as the weight of his punishment hit him, and his lawyer had to step in to read the statement. The lawyer also became tearful while reading it. Reports mentioned that Barbara had welcomed the boys into her home at 2013, not knowing what they were planning. Judge Timothy Von Akron, who sentenced Antonio, stated that the 36-year sentence was the least punishment he could give for such a terrible crime. He also admitted that, in his 24 years as a judge, he had never encountered such a horrifying case. Stuart Harling. Stuart Harling was a shy teenager who spent most of his time in his room, lost in a world of violent video games and disturbing websites. No one knew that, in the darkness of his room, he was secretly planning to become a famous serial killer. At 19, Stuart abandoned his family and his career in accounting, immersing himself completely in his dark fantasy world. But soon, just living in this virtual world wasn't enough for him. He decided to make his twisted dreams a reality by killing Cheryl Moss, a 32-year-old woman. Stuart later told psychiatrists that he was inspired to become a serial killer after watching a documentary about Richard Ramirez, a notorious criminal who murdered 13 people in Los Angeles. He explained that he felt no emotion while attacking Cheryl Moss. To him, she was no different from the characters he killed in his video games. Judge Brian Barker sentenced Stuart to at least 20 years in prison, remarking that Stuart's cold and terrifying actions showed how little they meant to him. Stuart's reaction didn't show any sign of remorsefulness as he looked directly into the eye of the judge. Brandon Spencer. Brandon Spencer, just 19 years old, fired a gun at a Halloween party at the University of Southern California campus in Los Angeles in 2012. Thankfully, no one died, but he hurt 4 people, so he got charged with trying to murder them. During a fun party, everything went crazy when gunshots rang out. Cops quickly found out Spencer did it. He's known for being in a local gang. Spencer's lawyers said he shot in self-defense because he was scared of other gang members who had targeted him before. Surprisingly, one of the people he shot had beef with him before, making things more complicated. At the trial, people said good things about Spencer, even a cop. His lawyers said he was a good guy before the shooting, caught up in gang stuff. But the other side said shooting into a crowd is always dangerous, no matter why you do it. They said Spencer being in a gang and having a gun was a big danger. So, the court agreed with them and gave Spencer 40 years in jail. When he got sentenced, Spencer cried and hit his head on the table, upset about what happened. Even though he said he didn't do it, he had to face the reality of what the court decided. Caleb Sharp. Caleb Sharp was the one responsible for the tragic Freeman school shooting. He was given a 40-year prison sentence by the judge. Caleb admitted to killing one classmate and hurting 3 others during the 2017 shooting in Spokane. The attack happened while the students were in the hallway. On the day of his sentencing, the courtroom was packed with people. Over 200 individuals spoke about how the event had affected them, urging Judge Michael Price to give Caleb the harshest punishment possible. Before the judge made his decision, Caleb's defense attorney requested a 20-year sentence, while the prosecution suggested a sentence of 35 years to life. Ultimately, the judge decided on a 40-year term, but Caleb will get credit for the 5 years he has already spent in jail. Before being sentenced, Caleb apologized to his victims and to the mother of Sam Strawn, the boy who died in the shooting. He asked for their forgiveness as he spoke to the court, though he showed no emotion when the sentence was finally given. Alex and Derek King. Young Alex King appeared in court, looking neat, well-spoken, and sharp. Observing him, no one would suspect he was capable of committing a terrible crime. At just 12 years old, Alex, along with his 13-year-old brother Derek, committed a shocking act on November 26, 2001. The 2 brothers killed their father, Terry King, by beating him with an aluminum baseball bat, and then set their home on fire in Cantonment, Florida. A family friend named Ricky Chavis was also involved. He was convicted as an accessory because he hid the boys in his trailer after the crime. Terry King was 40 years old when he died. The boys claimed they acted to stop the mental abuse they endured from their father, saying he would glare at them and spank them frequently. The prosecution tried both Chavis and the King brothers for the same crime. Chavis was acquitted, but the brothers were convicted. Derek King received an 8-year prison sentence, while Alex got 7 years. Alex was released in 2008 at the age of 18, having served 6 years, and Derek was released in March 2009 at the age of 20. During the trial and sentencing, the boys testified calmly. They stood expressionless with their heads down, showing no emotion. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Howard Rice was just 16 years old when he did something terrible. He killed his entire family. This included his parents and his 2 younger siblings. He attacked them with 2 different weapons on May 2011. When he went to court, Howard admitted he was guilty. Since he was a minor, the family court judge wanted to give him a lighter sentence. However, the prosecution disagreed and appealed. In 2020, Howard was resentenced as an adult. When the police arrested him, Howard agreed to talk without a lawyer. He told them he was angry at his mother. Due to the severity of his crimes, which included killing children, he faced up to 125 years in prison. Ultimately, he received 3 concurrent life sentences. The judge gave him credit for the 7 years and 275 days he had already spent in jail. He must serve 30 years before he can be considered for parole. Howard remained calm when his sentence was announced. He did apologize to his remaining family members, speaking softly and emotionally in court, according to reports. What are your thoughts on Howard's action and his sentencing? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. James Fairweather. James was a troubled teenager with dark dreams of becoming a notorious serial killer. He was sentenced to 27 years in prison for stabbing 2 people, both of whom died from their injuries. His first victim, James Atfield, had a brain injury and was attacked by Fairweather in Colchester, Essex, on March 24, 2014. 3 months later, Fairweather struck again, killing Nahid Almania, a 31-year-old Saudi student at the University of Essex. On May 2015, as he was plotting a third attack, the police caught him. James admitted to both murders and pleaded guilty. Shockingly, he was only 15 years old when he committed these horrific acts. He attended Colchester Academy, where he faced bullying due to his prominent ears and struggled academically because of dyslexia and autism. Despite his young age and mental challenges, James described his crimes in chilling detail, showing no remorse. He later tried to appeal his sentence, arguing that his age and mental state should reduce his punishment, but the appeal was denied. Which of these reactions affected you the most? And do you think the punishment given to these teenagers fits the crime? Let us know your answer in the comments section.